Good evening. Welcome to the May 3rd, 2022 regular meeting of the Charter Township of Meridian Township Board. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Lemaster, could we have a roll call, please?
Supervisor Jackson.
Here.
Clerk Guthrie. Treasurer DeShane.
Here.
Trustee Hendrickson.
Here.
Trustee Sundlin.
Here.
Trustee Wilson.
Here.
Trustee Wazinski. All are present except for Clerk Guthrie and Trustee Wazinski.
Thank you. And I believe Trustee Wazinski will be a little late today. She will be here. The next item on our agenda is a presentation from the Capital Area District Library, their annual report.
Okay, thank you for having us today. My name is Tom Moore. I'm the head librarian at the Hazlitt branch of the Capital Area District Libraries. And I'm sure you know Betsy Hull, head librarian at the Okemos branch of the Capital Area District Libraries here. This is our annual report presentation for 2021, so a little late in the year here. I do want to point out that the annual report was included in your digital file in your board packet. It's about 40 pages of a big, beautiful document, covers all sorts of things that Cattle did in 2021. We don't have that much time, so I'm not going to go through this whole document today. But we are going to highlight some of the cool local things that we thought were important or fascinating, or maybe we just had pictures of. For Betsy and I, we kind of joked around that 2021 was really about getting back to the future, right? It was all about looking at 2020 and trying to get back to that normal of early 2020 and 2019, and then also trying to push ourselves forward to find new and innovative ways to connect with our community members. And so it's about, moving back and kind of creating this new standard for what normal will be in the future here. And here's a little bit of what we've been up to. January through May, we were still contactless. All of our doors were closed. You could pick up items by appointment. Okemos and Hazlitt, we were the top 2 circulating branches in the system, so that was pretty exciting. Hazlitt's usually about 4th or 5th. Okemos is far and beyond all of the other cattle branches all the time. So we're excited about that. We make up about 30% of the physical circulations for the cattle system here in Meridian Township. One of the things that came from our contactless services was this idea of take and makes, that we don't need to have groups and groups of people at the library all at a certain time to interact with them. We decided that we could package that up, hand it out kind of one person at a time. And so we've been creating craft kits, STEM packets. At the library at Hazlitt right now, we're handing out spice kits with a little bit of spice and some recipes and book recommendations for you to try. And so those are going to be a mainstay of our services going forward, where we can create these activities that then you can take home and interact with in your own way. The other thing that came from this is that, libraries have always been creating displays, but we took it to another level at Hazlitt here. And with so many gatherings not being available to people, we thought this would be a really good way to engage with people. Create these big, large interactive displays and have our community members help us create them. So whether it's our stained glass windows where we encourage people to paint tissue paper to create that, or our cardboard city that went down our hall and into half of our youth area, and we encouraged the kids to decorate and bring in boxes to help us build that city. It was all about bringing a smile to people's faces and encouraging creativity and discovery. In June, we reopened our buildings. We launched our summer reading challenge, that annual program to encourage kids to read over the summer. And we had about 6,000 people register for summer reading over, system-wide. So it was a pretty incredible program despite still being in this mire of uncertainty in 2021. And some of our branches started back into our in-person programs, and we'll let Betsy share some of the things that were happening at Okemos during that time.
What button?
Just spacebar.
We used sidewalk chalk to develop creativity. We read to dogs to develop literacy skills. This worked better at work. We learned we each could add something to make something for a much larger picture. We learned to use technology to bring people together in the same room or online at the same time, and mostly we were successful. We learned it's easy to teach about gravity and force, lift and propulsion, when you can run around outside and toss airplanes at each other. We did the same when we flew our handmade kites on a beautiful summer day. I have to tell you, popsicles were involved with this activity. Sometimes story times are the foundation for our literacy programs, and we had them inside. We had them outside. Our teen advisory board regrouped, meeting outside for an ice cream social on a beautiful fall day, or inside to help create library decorations for the winter. We learned Halloween can be just as much fun outside as it is inside, and it's much easier to clean up after outside. And Mr. Tom and Santa Claus always steal the show, no matter if they're inside or outside the building. They're a hard act to follow. One of the lifelong benefits we make to our communities is through our U.S. Citizenship Classes. And this year, we were able to celebrate several new citizens to our community. I like to think this sentiment is an exaggeration. You are a straight-up gift to humanity. One of the many thank you cards we got last year. But helping one child learn to read builds stronger families, which helps build stronger communities, and I know that is not an exaggeration.
All right. Thank you. Far less words. So we were looking in our buildings, reconnecting with our communities, but we're not just looking inside the library building. We're also trying to connect to some of our old partners as we were coming out of COVID here. And so we kicked off 2021 with a snowman takeover at Central Park, just outside of this building here. And our Key Club at the Hazlitt High School helped us out with that. And we also collected for lots of other organizations around, collecting for Toys for Tots, the Ingham County Animal Shelter. We painted rocks for the Potter Park Zoo, and we collaborated with organizations like the Meridian Senior Center, Harris Nature Center, Nokomis Cultural Heritage Center, and many more groups and schools around the township to help support one another as we were trying to all climb out of a hard time of 2021 here. In the fall came the return to school, and if you've ever been to the Hazlitt Library after school hours, you know that it gets wild. We are a hot spot for middle schoolers after school there. We got new door counters just at the end of 2021, and this little chart here shows the yellow line of door count for the Hazlitt School on a typical day. So between 2 and 3, we'll see 30 to 60 middle schoolers every day coming to the library to hang out, spend time with their friends. It adds a little bit of chaos, but is a great service that we provide to the community. We also initiated our Student Success Initiative and expanded that to almost all the school districts in the county. And I think right now we have 28,000 students that are now connected to the library and can borrow materials just using their student IDs. So they don't have to have a parent to sign them up for the library card. They have immediate access just by being enrolled in our schools. And we've gone a step further with that by piloting a long-term hotspot lending program where we're lending hotspots for 6 months to students in need who are part of that program. So that's pilot right now, but hoping to continue to be able to expand that and other programs at Cattle into the future here. So that's just a little bit of what Cattle's doing. Again, I would encourage you to check out our annual report. It will be on our website hopefully soon. We just finished it up, so read that in your board packet. And I'm still pretty new to the township, so I'd encourage you to stop by the Hazlitt Library. I'd love to speak with you and answer questions if you have any. You want to talk about the township or the library or the kids after school, please, I'd enjoy that. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tech Guy.
I think some board members have a question or two for you.
More a comment than a question. Thank you. As you know, our Meridian Township residents value our library services very highly, as noted in your record, or your highest number of checkouts, I'm assuming, for Okemos. I'm glad to hear Hazlitt is second place. Library experience is about books, it's about media, it's about rooms, but mostly I would say it's about people. And I say to you, the director, that in the 2 librarians you have here, Betsy Hull and Tom Moore, you've chosen 2 excellent librarians that are actually much more than librarians. They are both true community leaders, and they're out in the community. They're involved in service clubs. They're doing a lot more than just be the librarian. And we feel their presence in the township, and we appreciate it. And we commend you for your good choices for our 2 libraries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing with us your successes.
It's our pleasure.
Trustee,
I just think the audience might want to know that the Director of Cattle is here tonight, Scott Doomstra, and also the representative for Hazlitt, Okemos, Meridian Township, Sandy Geber, is also here tonight.
on the board.
She's on the Cattle Board, correct.
Thank you, and welcome to you all as well. The next item on our agenda is citizens address agenda items and non-agenda items. There are a few rules we try to carry out. There are 2 opportunities for public comment. Citizens who wish to address agenda or non-agenda items will have an opportunity at the beginning of the meeting, as well as near the end of the meeting. Individuals who wish to address the board must complete, we ask that you complete a green form located near the door with the agendas, and present this card to the board secretary prior to the public comment period. At the appropriate time, now, the supervisor will call upon individuals who have completed a green card to speak on the topics. Citizens are asked to limit comments to 3 minutes. A timekeeper will communicate to the individual who is addressing the board at the conclusion of the 3 minutes. The board highly values public comment and input. However, the board meeting format is designed to facilitate the evening's agenda, and therefore restricts board members from engaging in conversation with speakers or immediately responding to questions. Questions and concerns may be addressed by the board later in the agenda and/or may be assigned for follow-up by the board or township manager at a later date. In order to foster the orderly conduct of the board's business on behalf of the community, please refrain from rude or discourteous behavior. Address all comments to the board and not to individual board members or to others in attendance. Finally, the meeting is a meeting of the Board of the Township held in public for the purpose of conducting the business of the township. It is not a meeting of the public. Please limit comments to the issues on the agenda to the greatest extent possible. So I have several green sheets, and the first is Nicholas Zaruli. Yes, and please give us your name and address for the minute records.
Yes, my name is Nicholas Sorelli. I live at 1555 West Pond Drive. That's the Ponds Cooperative. I'm just here to speak on the Daniels Drainage Assessment. I understand that the price has gone up for our property from $400,000 to some $900,000, and I'm just kind of curious, number one, why? Because I saw there was a special benefit assessed against us, but I don't really see the replacement of the dock and the sidewalks that were torn up as a benefit so much as a compensation for something that was necessary to the township. I'm on a fixed income as a disabled veteran, so I don't really have the budget for much more of an increase, and since I'm part of the Ponds Cooperative, everything that goes to the property is assessed equally among the members, so I'm just a little concerned about that. I do appreciate the format, and I appreciate all the stuff being online. It was very easy to research this, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Ella Green. I beg your pardon?
She doesn't have a comment.
You do not wish to speak at this time? Okay, thank you. Next is Catherine Scheck. And next will be Charles Barbieri.
Okay. I'm Catherine Scheck, 1570 West Pond Drive. Just want to say, as a resident of the Ponds, I feel as if I and my neighbors are being targeted maliciously by a governing body that is charged with our well-being and fair treatment. This is in regards to the drainage project. The fact that now, after the Ponds refused to open itself up to needless financial liability by declining the township's suggestion to make our private property available to the public at large, who has no accountability to us and is not required to sign the same agreements we did to live here, now they have decided our financial responsibility to this project is more than double the cost they already gave us. The fact that this new assessment cost came without warning and without due process, the fact that our township refused basic transparency on the formula as to how this new cost was reached, citing our benefit to the pond, despite the fact that this entire district benefits from that drainage system, to which we now have to ask what benefit we have that accounts for more than double the original cost. All of those things make it obvious the township is not treating us fairly, but instead is leveraging this new cost against us as a matter of spite at best. As a voter, I find it disturbing that this is how they conduct themselves, especially as they've chosen to target residents who, in majority, live on modest or fixed incomes, like myself, like my family, like my neighbors, many of whom were flooded out and displaced for several months last year thanks to that faulty drainage system in the height of the COVID crisis. I don't have the luxury to look lightly on this bait and switch, and I know that among my fellow voters at the ponds, there are many in worse condition than I am. I don't know how we're supposed to agree to an arrangement that is intentionally made to screw us over.
Thank you. Charles Barbieri.
Thank you. Charles Barbieri. I appear today on behalf of the ponds, as I've done on numerous other occasions. We appear in opposition today to the proposed resolution item under item 12B, which is a resolution that would approve the proposed assessment for the Daniels Dam project. As the last speaker indicated, the last assessment now would double what previously had been the figures given to the ponds on 2 prior occasions. We incorporate points that we've raised in our letter of May 2, yesterday, 2022, as well as our prior letters and statements, which are part of the record. While we appreciate that the township has petitioned for this project that was long overdue, and we also appreciate the township being willing to contribute a significant amount for the project, we do not believe that the proposed assessment is fair or proportionate for the benefit received. 3 points. First, the assessment is being adopted without the fair notice and opportunity for comment that was envisioned by the special assessment procedure. There was no notification, no indication that it was going to double when the last assessment roll was circulated before the April 12th, 2022 meeting. The formula that's now used was changed from that which had been used at the 2 prior calculations that had been made for the assessment. Second, the assessment, as indicated, is unfair and disproportionate to the benefits received. This detention basin on the ponds parcel is a regional detention basin. It collects the surface water from the entire drainage district. It's important to note that the ponds parcels are subject to a perpetual easement, and that will not change with this project. They will not have the full ability to use that portion of their premises. They also have to maintain the easement as part of the requirements that the Drain Commissioner has imposed. Third, the change appears to be prompted by the fact that certain township representatives were dissatisfied by the pond's reasoned refusal to open up its private area to the public. Limited access is required because of the pond's bylaws and also because of insurance costs and liability considerations. The impact is an unfair assessment which is divisive and financially detrimental and will cause increased assessments that each residential shareholder must absorb. We reserve all rights, request that you reject tonight's assessment, revise that assessment, and hold a new public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Celeste Bennett, followed by Krista Scheck.
Good evening. I'm the board president for the Ponds Cooperative Homes Incorporated, which you commonly refer to as the Ponds.
Excuse me, would you give us your name, your full name?
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
address, please?
Because you announced me, I thought. I'm Celeste Bennett.
Thank you.
Yes, and I live at 1563 West Pond Drive
Thank you.
in Okemos, obviously. I'm speaking to you this evening both as the capacity as the board president and also as a concerned township citizen. With all due respect given to your positions and the difficult task that was placed before you, I am appalled, absolutely appalled at the actions the board took with respect to the ponds. Since the ponds letter of objections are already, in your possession, and my time is limited, I just want to place emphasis on the following points for the record. As was indicated, the pond that resides on our property is the physical retention receptacle for all 219 acres of the Daniels Drain area that collects those storm runoffs. Having that larger retention pond removes the burden of individual property owners and neighborhoods from having to store that water themselves. And in that process of taking and storing their water, that puts their risk of flooding on us. So because we are the point of lowest elevation. So the work done on and for the Ponds Cooperative was for the benefit of the entire district. So you made the suggestion to allow the ponds to have public access to the private property to become a quasi-park, I guess, for the district. And you knew April 12th that even if we wanted to, because you'd been told numerous times, we could not do that. We had covenants with our residents, our insurance and mortgage companies that would not allow us to do that. So, and I see I'm going to run out of time here, but you made disparaging comments and remarks about the ponds. You painted us as being uncooperative, and you indicated for the next day for the express purpose you were going to meet so that you could raise substantially the ponds assessments. And I can only imagine your dismay when you realized you had already charged us the highest you could under the current formula, under the previous formula. That's when you decided to go ahead and come up with this pond special benefit factor, which even its name indicates that it's specific to the ponds and targeted to the ponds. As when already indicated, you did this without notice or due process, and you felt that was fair because you had already held 2 public review periods, which of course we didn't know that you were going to do this. So I'll shorten this up because one of the things I want to make sure that I say is that you decided what you did was fair and equitable. However, asking people who live in 980 and 1,080 square foot apartments to now assume their share of this project, which would be $6,000 to $6,500 for a project that everyone in the district benefits from, I think has shown us very disrespectful as property owners. And we've been residents of Meridian Township since the ponds itself, since the mid-'80s. And I think that we deserved better respect than this and better fairness, and that we deserve to have our property rights acknowledged and recognized. And I would think that every property owner in this township would be very concerned when a local government takes an assessed amount and then last minute jury rigs the numbers so they can increase that amount more than double. And I think if this action goes unchallenged, the same thing might occur again, and the next time these actions might be against somebody else and not just us.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Krista Scheck.
So I am Krista Scheck. I live at 1570 West Pond Drive, at the risk of being redundant. The idea that Walden Ponds benefits us, that the pond benefits us enough to pay a disproportionate assessment cost is absolutely ludicrous. The purpose of the project was to repair a faulty drainage system that only last year resulted in flooding for other property owners in the district, not just us. The pond only comes into it because it is a convenient watershed to prevent such flooding, the only alternative of which is to have our uphill neighbors collect the rainwater that rains on their property so that it can't flood those of us on lower elevations. This was something that was going to go ahead regardless of whether or not the residents wanted it to. Make no mistake, this was something done to us, and while we might be getting new walkways, trees, and viewing platforms out of it, it's only because the drainage project ripped out all of those things when doing the repairs. Again, the benefit of the pond itself is negligible compared to the benefit to the entire district in dealing with flooding concerns. The township has called our board of directors unreasonable for not granting the public access to our pond, but what's really unreasonable is expecting a nonprofit corporation concerned only with affordable housing for residents on a modest income to solely take on the legal and financial liability of having uninsured non-residents on our private property. We have already had issues with our property being vandalized. The township is calling us stubborn for for refusing a request they had no right to ask of us. Many of the people living here are retirees, students, minimum wage workers such as myself, or families on a fixed budget. We are willing to pay our fair share for the assessment because the drains needed to be fixed, but what's been levied against us by the township is more than double that amount. They have made it perfectly obvious by the arbitrary way that they have raised our assessment that this is intended to be a punitive measure simply for asserting our rights as private property owners. What is happening is extortion, plain and simple. Thank you.
Thank you. Ronald Ashley.
I'll pass.
Kelsey Simasco.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Simasco. I live at 1555 West Pond Drive in the Ponds. I'm here, like everyone else, to, object against the tax assessment. I guess the real frustration lies with, we all recognize that under the old formula, numbers change, we get it. This is an ongoing project, we get it, prices change. But changing the formula and not giving notice and then doubling the assessment without notice, without really process, without a ton of time to respond, just feels kind of underhanded. And especially, with regards to us being stubborn by not allowing this public access onto our onto our property. In the Daniels Drain area, a public park drains to the area, right? So if there's a public park on the drainage land, why do we need to give the public access to our land? If they want to see a benefit from the drainage that they're not directly seeing in their backyard, they can go to the public park within the drainage district and go see that park, great, not flooded. We love the new drainage project. That's an option. But, with doubling the assessment and then having it be, feeling punitive for not allowing public access, this is getting to a point where it will be a government taking. Because an easement that we have to maintain, okay, we agreed to that, but we didn't agree to the caveat of public access because, as everyone else had stated, our insurance won't let us, our bylaws won't let us. So this isn't an issue of us being stubborn. This is an issue of us being property owners, wanting to retain these property rights, and I would love to not live in a low drainage area. Trust me, I really would love to live probably where you guys live, up not getting flooded. But I'm a student, and that's not, an option for me. That's not an option for our neighbors. That's not an option for a lot of our community. So you can't just force this onto us and expect nothing to happen. So I would really appreciate if you could either be transparent with this benefit formula for redoing, the sidewalks and the docks that were torn up in this Daniels Drain project, but also maybe reassessing. We'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Harlow Loesch, followed by, we'll come back to that.
Hi, my name is Harlow Locke, and given that I'm also talking on 12B, Locke is appropriate. I live at 1445 East Pond Drive, and I'm really glad that my neighbors and community members have come here to tell you who they are, and that's what I want to do too. I moved here from California, where housing prices are really unaffordable, and a lot of my friends and neighbors who worked full-time jobs with college degrees were homeless and lived out of their cars. And one of the things that I really liked about Michigan, I moved here to get my graduate degree at MSU, is that this is a community. We look out for each other, and that's not something I'm used to, right? But it's something I love and I value. I want to tell you about the people that live next to me. So I bought my unit for about $9,000 in cash, and then I assumed a portion of the collective mortgage. This is affordable housing, right? This is affordable housing for people who would not be able to stay in the community if it went away. And the way that this assessment is attacking them threatens their ability to stay there. So these are people who are disabled. These are people who are retired who've lived here their whole lives. So what's happening is the change in the assessment formula is shifting burden from people who are affluent, people who are comfortable, people who have, homes that they did not pay, that they paid more than $9,000 to a very disadvantaged group, a group that is least able to bear this burden. And we're really good neighbors. We look out for each other. If anybody's sick in the community, everyone's bringing them over snacks and, making soup and walking their dogs if they've had surgery. This is a community. We look out for each other, but we also look out for you. As people have said, our pond helps keep your basements dry. And that's something that we like to do because we love living here and we love our community. But we just hope that that's reflected in how you allocate the assessment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I believe the last name is Jackson. The first name is ASJER. And there's no address. Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at this time? Then we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the Township Manager's Report.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor and board members. I'll be brief. I do want to cover just a few items. Next agenda on the 17th of May, you'll see the Brightline Proposal, which is the IT improvements that we hope to see in the township. You'll also have a discussion item on the art funding, focusing on the local roads and IT. The audit, we are hopefully on track for June 7th. We'll know more on Thursday. Our new finance director is committed to a starting date of the 16th. The community science project, which has been bannered about for about 5 or 7 years, will be before you on the 17th as well. We start contract negotiations with our 4 bargaining groups next week. The Hazlet Village Square has seen a lot of action in the last few weeks in front of the Planning Commission, and there will be a discussion on funding of that project on the 17th, the start of a discussion. Also, I want to thank the Hazlet Beautification Association, the HBA. I know Trustee Wilson and I attended an event there on Sunday for a bench donation, and the point looks great. If you have a chance, stop out. I have a meeting tomorrow with MSU. The EDC meets Thursday morning. We celebrated our administrative professionals yesterday, and thank you to Supervisor Jackson for attending that. We have a police ceremony on Monday at 3:30. It's been a while since we've inducted new officers. It'll be a great day for us. Officer Acker and Officer Akers will both be sworn in by the chief and the clerk at 3:30 on Monday. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. It's now time for board member reports of activities and announcements. No one? Mr. DeShane?
I'll make a brief report. As of Friday, I am now a certified Michigan Municipal Treasurer. I completed the 3rd year of the Basic Institute put on by the Michigan Municipal Treasurers Association. It was a rigorous 100-hour course, but very worthwhile, and came back with many ideas for improving our procedures and making our tax collection procedures even more efficient and user-friendly for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 8 is approval of our agenda. Trustee Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I move the agenda as presented.
Support by Trustee Brzezinski. The motion is to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Chair votes yes, and the agenda is approved. We now have our consent agenda, which includes communications, I believe up to the minute, to just before our meeting, minutes of our April 26, 2022 regular meeting, and the manager's bills. Trustee Wilson.
I move the consent agenda for May 4th of 2022.
With
an amendment to the minutes. It's a small amendment. These are the minutes of April 26th. It's on page 12. I was misquoted. Trustee Wilson stated under this ordinance, a family of two unrelated parties are not permitted to reside together. No, that is not what he said. It's a family or two unrelated persons are permitted to reside together.
All right.
That's the way that should read.
Treasurer DeShane.
I support the motion as amended.
As amended. Other comments, discussion? Then all in favor of, I'm sorry, with bills. Mr. Lemaster, I need a roll call vote on the consent agenda.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson,
Yes.
Trustee Sundlin,
Yes.
Trustee Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you. We have no questions for our attorney tonight, certainly at this point. And so we move to item 11, which is a public hearing on the the 2021 order to maintain sidewalks in the Special Assessment District number 19. Mr. Opsimer.
Good evening, Supervisor
Director
Jackson, board members.
Opsimer, I'm sorry.
So tonight before you is Resolution 5 for
Mr.
the 20...
Opsimer, one moment, please. In the case of a public hearing, I need to officially open the public hearing. The time I have is 6:40, Mr. Lemaster. And Mr. Opsimer will now continue. Director Opsimer will now continue.
Thank you, Supervisor Jackson and board members. So tonight before you is Resolution 5 for the 2021 order to maintain. This is the special assessment that we use for maintaining our sidewalks. This program began in 1999 to develop a proactive approach for minimizing residential sidewalk hazards. The neighborhoods that were vetted for the 2021 order to maintain were Briarwood 3, 4, 5, East Meadows condominiums, Heritage Hills, and Heritage Hills 2, 3, and 4. We did receive 6 or 7 calls from residents. This work is completed. It was completed last year. Primarily, residents were confused as to the logistic and the order in which the process occurs. The work is completed prior to the assessments being finalized. The resolution before you tonight will finalize the roll for the summer tax bill, and all residents' questions have been answered satisfactory. The only thing was some homes did see an increase of 1 concrete slab based on our latest inspection late last year.
Thank you. Are there members of the public that would like to speak to this issue and this public hearing? Seeing none, we will close this public hearing at 6:42 and move on to our action items. Item 12A has to do with the rezoning, and we will hear from Director Schmidt on this item that we've seen several times, and so this is for final adoption, I presume.
It is, Madam Supervisor. At the direction of the Township Board, we did publish the notice of introduction prior to this meeting, so the Township Board is in a position to take final action on this rezoning, which would rezone the property at 2260 Jolly Oak Drive from professional and office to C2 commercial. Staff would recommend approval.
All right. Trustee Sundlin.
Move to adopt the resolution approving the final adoption rezoning number 21060 and ordinance to rezone the approximately 1 acre parcel located at 2260 Jolly Oak Drive from professional PO to professional and office to C2 commercial.
Support. Support by Trustee Wilson, was that? All right. Trustee Sundlin, would you have other comments?
Oh, no, just
Supporting
that
comments?
Becky Bushin-Kolka is a really good member of our community, and she's moving forward, and you just want to support her efforts with her commercial.
Okay. By this rezoning? Trustee Wilson.
Yes, the property that's located immediately south of this property is commercial, also the property directly west. So it's a logical position to take that we rezone this property to commercial along a major artery.
Trustee Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I'll simply add that the future land use map for this parcel is commercial, and so we are in line with our master plan as we make this change. So I'll be supportive of the motion that's been made.
Other comments? Treasurer DeShane.
We heard from the applicant 2 meetings ago, and we understand, and many of us know her to be a long-time business owner here in the township, and we're all encouraged by her commitment to staying here and purchasing her own property with this rezoning. And as was said before, and staff confirmed, this rezoning does fit with the surrounding zoning, and for that reason, I'll have no objection, and I will be supporting this as well.
I would only add that support, the Planning Commission was in, I believe, unanimous support of this rezoning request. And so I believe we're ready to vote. The motion is to approve the rezoning for parcel 21, the rezoning number 21-060. Mr. Lemaster, would you have, give us a roll call?
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Sundlin?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Item 12B, Daniels Drain Public Improvement Special Assessment District Number 21, Resolution Number 5. Mr. Opsimer.
Just before you start, I just want to make sure that the board's aware that Miss Stacy Hassong is in the audience tonight. She's our counsel in regards to this issue. In case you have any questions, she's available at your convenience. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Supervisor Jackson and board members again. And thank you, Manager Walsh, for pointing out that our legal counsel is here tonight. So I want to kind of walk through this slowly to make sure that the public has a good understanding. A drain project like this, which actually began in the summer of 2015 and is now concluding in 2022, has obviously had a long and sordid history to it. So beginning with just a simple reminder that this is a Chapter 20 drain under the Michigan Drain Code of 1956. This means that the township's lone responsibility is establishing the special assessment role. It's unique to all other chapters of the Drain Code in which the Drain Commissioner would establish the special assessment role. So in accordance with state law, the Ingham County Drain Commissioner is responsible for the engineering, the scope, the cost, and the drain district boundaries. And so just a reminder, this was in the letter that went out to residents, but if residents do have questions about scope, cost, drain district boundaries, they can contact Paul Pratt, who is the Deputy Drain Commissioner overseeing this project, as well as the 2 public contacts that GEI, the engineering firm, has made available to the public. So now I want to kind of go back to 2015 to revisit the very beginning of this project. So this is back in July of 2015. The Ponds Cooperative approached the Township Board, and preceding that, they approached Township staff about the Daniels Drain and the need for drain improvements to the drain. So the township, from the very outset of this project, has worked proactively and has gone above and beyond state law and requirements to make sure that the public and the property owners within the drain district are aware of the drain project. So after the initial set of meetings from July to September of 2015, the Township Board and Deputy Manager Derek Perry at that time decided that they would hold a special Township Board meeting. The meeting was solely focused on the Daniels Drain. Every property owner in the Daniels Drain received a notice. That is not a legal requirement. That was something that we chose to do in transparency. The special meeting was solely focused on the Daniels Drain, and the purpose was to educate members of the public. The Ingham County Drain Commissioner was invited and I believe did attend, or one of his representatives attended on his behalf. And so the purpose was to give the public information about how this process would unfold and what to likely expect. Again, this meeting wasn't required by state law, but this was an effort made by the township to make sure that all property owners were aware of the project prior to the board petitioning. So at this time, when the special meeting was held, the township board had not petitioned. That petition was passed on February 2nd of 2016 after many meetings were held. And having gone back and reviewed those meetings, I can tell you that there was apprehension from the board based on prior drain projects and the costs of those drain projects. And anybody that goes back and watches those meetings would draw similar conclusions. So during the special board meeting on September 26, 2015, the Township Board asked Deputy Manager Perry at the time to prepare some draft assessment rolls. So what did the board want to know? They wanted to look at how the cost sharing would work. So with a hypothetical total project cost, how would the cost share actually work and look? And so based on the conversations at that public meeting, township staff did prepare 3 different rolls actually. One was in the amount of $100,000 for total cost, one was in the amount of $1 million, and the third was in the amount of $2 million. And so that's actually, it's not the total cost of the project that was estimated, it was the total amount of the assessment roll for the township share, which is just under 83%. And it was assumed that our share would be just under 83% back in 2015 as well. And so based on that initial assessment roll, when you look at it, the 2 ponds cooperative parcels were assessed at a total value of $130,000, or 13% of the total roll. And this is actually very similar to Resolution 5 that's before you tonight. So this is a history of how the assessment has evolved from October 5th, 2015, the Township Board meeting. Actually, that should be October 6th, my apologies. To Resolution 2 in November of 2021, to Resolution 3, March 15th, 2022, to tonight with Resolution 5. And so essentially, at that time, Mr. Perry was trying to establish benefit derived for all the parcels within the drain district using the estimated cost of $1 to $2 million. And so you can see that Resolution 5 is actually much more similar than Resolution 2 or 3 than the 2015 draft roll that was prepared. So the cost sharing hasn't changed profoundly. What has changed is the total cost of the project. We have gone from a project that was estimated to be $1 to $2 million in 2015 to a project that is $6.44 million, with $5.238 being the township's share based on the drain board. So the project is up, depending on whether you use the $1 million or the $2 million estimate from 2015, 262% to 524%. And that is due to the scope and the work that was included in the project, and also the timeline for completing the engineering and when it went to bid. So this project went to bid last year in 2021, after the pandemic, after global supply chain issues, labor shortages, and everything else. So the timing was unfortunate, and it's no one's fault in particular, but cost is a driving factor here. Going back to 2015, there was also speculation that that MDOT would voluntarily pay 50% of the assessment. And I actually want to go back just so that everybody can see the Township Board meeting in question. It was July 21st, 2015.
Opportunity to meet with the Michigan Department of Transportation. They are a key player in this because when this project was begun over 40 years ago, Grand River Avenue was only 2 lanes and it is now 5 lanes. And in the preliminary meeting that we had with them, they have indicated an indication of providing 50% for this desirable project. So at this point, we would ask at the next meeting that this body take up a notice of intent to bring a petition under Chapter 20. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and of course, Mr. Perry will bring you more details.
So that's the excerpt of that July 21st meeting. Mr. Geebies, what happened?
I actually know what happened. Happened as a planning commission today. I got you.
Okay.
There's a setting on the default view that is when you go to a PowerPoint, it's popping it over.
So anytime I open the PowerPoint, it's going to do that.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Sorry.
In that case, hold on 1 minute. I'm going to play one other excerpt before we flip back. So I'm sorry, I'm going to go out of order here. So there was one other thing, and I'll just describe it verbally real quick, and we'll flip through the slides. The October 6th meeting, so this is the meeting that followed the special board meeting about the Daniels Drain that all the property owners received notice for. Then Clerk Dreyfus asked Deputy Manager Perry a question about how special benefits would actually be assessed. And I'll just play the video clip and let it speak for itself.
And this is going to be worthy of much further debate, but this was assuming that the pond itself, that this is to do the entire project in terms of sort of dredging and recleaning and redoing the pond itself, aside from the other improvements. So then is the benefit that was associated with this, was that computed in that the pond was actually a private pond that's associated with this particular organization? Or was that something completely separate from the whole equation?
Again, the pond is not private to that development. The pond is part of the drain itself, and again, existed prior to the actual development. So although the ponds reap some obvious benefits to being located close to the pond, it's not a direct relationship as far as I think what you're alluding to. Now, if some let's say landscaping, or if for some reason the pathway wanted to be redone through this project, that is something that you could say that they're receiving 100% of that benefit, and that would not be split amongst the other folks.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
Okay, so I raised this point because this is the impetus for why myself and our township chief engineer and our consultant Spicer Group revisited the role. So we went back and we reviewed everything from 2015. Obviously, things changed dramatically over the course of 6 to 7 years, and sometimes you lose institutional knowledge. So we went back and reviewed this just to get a good indication of what had transpired. And what we asked ourselves after the last public hearing and the first public hearing is, does the assessment role account for benefit derived? Previously, we used the p-values. We had the 1.2 and the 1.4. And when we asked ourselves, based on all the public comment, is this based within the benefit derived that we have to utilize? And there wasn't really a methodology or a rhyme or a reason for 1.2 or 1.4. The proximity factor was clear. The proximity was proximity to the pond. So which parcels you assigned proximity to was clear, but the reason for selecting the multipliers was not clear. And so we asked ourselves, okay, let's do some math and see if it actually comes out the right way. But real quickly, I just want to go back to this. So going back to 2015 momentarily, the MDOT question and whether or not they would pay 50% of the drain project obviously didn't come to fruition. They are paying 4.99% of the total project based on the Daniels Drain Drainage Board. And that is a board maintained by the Ingham County Drain Commissioner. We have no legal role in that public body. And so this is the, sorry, not that slide. And it was also speculated in 2015 that the township may pass on 100% of the assessment role to properties. That was a discussion between the board and staff. No decision was made. Of course, the township's decision to put forth 50% of the assessment role occurred this fall in September. That was Resolution 1. It was the first resolution brought. So where are we today? The township is paying 50% of the assessment role, which amounts to 40.70% of the total Daniels Drain project, and that is the largest single contributor to the Daniels Drain project by a large margin. And MDOT, the early theories about MDOT's participation based on the culvert that crosses underneath Grand River Avenue did not materialize, likely due to the cost escalation that we've seen with the project being 524% over. So during that October 6, 2015 meeting, this is just a slide encapsulating what Deputy Manager Perry said, which was that we would look at special benefit. We would look at things that are not drain related, and we would apply special benefit factors for those. So that was transparent back in 2015. The Ponds Cooperative did have a representative at that meeting, and so they were aware of that nearly 7 years ago. So going back to Resolution 5 and what's before you tonight. So essentially what we have done when we evaluated that p-value structure that we had, the 1.2 and the 1.4 p-values, we basically decided that we were going to just go back and calculate the math. So we acquired the bid tabs for the project. The bid tabs detail every unit that goes into the project, every white oak tree. So there's 4 white oaks. The bid tab details the unit cost for each white oak and the total cost for every plant species, every item, every drain pipe, etc. The construction plans likewise denote where those units go. So if there's 4 trees, the construction plans will show you where those units go. And so we took the bid tab and put them into 2 buckets, benefit derived and special benefit derived. And then we took the special benefit items and added them up, and then we subtracted them from the total roll. Then we were able to calculate a baseline assessment for all parcels based on C value, land cover, and A value, acreage. So rather than, essentially to encapsulate that, rather than just assigning it a 1.4 value, we actually did the math based on all the specific costs associated with the project. Covered that. And so item 3, every parcel will pay a base drain assessment. Like I said, we backed all the costs associated with the pond special benefit out of the roll to then be able to determine the baseline drain assessment based on the typical benefit derived. So using land cover and acreage. So why the difference between the 13% share for the ponds parcels from the assessment roll in 2015 and the 17.8% share in Resolution 5? Primarily because Deputy Manager Perry had no engineering plans, no bid tabs. We really had no earthly idea what work this project would encompass. We didn't know what drain pipes would be replaced, what drain pipes would stay, whether the pathway would be renovated, whether docks would go in, how many plantings, etc. So we didn't have the detail, the bid tab or the construction plans to actually do the methodology we have now done. And that methodology, that pond special benefit factor calculation, was shared on Monday morning. It doesn't sound like it's been shared with all of the owners within the ponds, but I'm hoping that that will be shared by their attorney with them. And it's also online as part of the board packet for everyone to review. And so all of the calculations are there and transparent. So again, just going back to the cost of the project, that's the primary driver today. So if the project had come in at the estimated $1 million, the assessment for these 2 parcels would be $178,000 today. Previous assessment rolls had single-family homes on Dobie with $15,000 assessments, depending on which roll you go back to and how much time you trace through. So, and one of that home in particular that I'm speaking of on Dobie, the front yard actually drains to a ditch on Dobie Road that doesn't have culverts. So that water doesn't actually flow into the larger drain system. So there, I mean, it's a terribly complex project, and as far as drain projects go, it's even more complex than most. So returning to 2021 and 2022, just to walk back through the resolution. Resolution 1 was approved. This was when the Township Board committed to investing 50% of the township, or 50% of the funds for the total assessment roll, essentially replacing MDOT's speculative commitment in 2015. Resolution 2 approved by the Township Board back on October 19th. Tentatively approved the establishment of the Special Assessment District for the purposes of paying the costs, and set the public hearing date. And then resolutions 3 and 4 were brought back on March 15th, setting the second public hearing date for April 12th. And then resolution 5, which is the final process under PA 188, is before you this evening. And these are summarized in your memo and were summarized verbatim in the letter that went out to all the property owners, so I'm not going to go through them. But this is just a list of all the changes that occurred to the assessment roll. The first being that the entire assessment roll was reduced by 5.38% based on the final project cost. And this is just a brief table that denotes the average cost by land use type. So the average cost, or the average assessment for commercial property is $32,395. The average for multifamily is $2,408. The average for single-family residential is $3,002. And of course, the HOA and commons parcels have no assessment. One other note that I will provide to the board on the HOA and commons parcels, the HOAs have not contacted us interested in paying the assessment, but we do know what the assessment amount is for the HOA open space parcels. So if the HOAs wish to pay on behalf of the property owners, we can take their payment and proportionately give that payment to those properties that are being assessed. So that was a question that has come from some residents, but not from the HOAs themselves and their board members. So just walking through the monthly costs, each unit in the ponds would pay $27.02 per month on average. This is 50% of the true cost, and for that, they do get the 100% of the benefit for all the special benefit and the drain benefit, and I've listed a few of the special benefit items in their total cost, not in the amount that was factored into the pond special benefit amount. So the 2 new docks were $103,260. The new pathway and removing the old pathway was $104,007, just to give 2 examples. One single-family residential parcel will pay more on average than the pond still, based on the amount of acreage that it has and its land cover. So there still is one single-family home with a higher assessment, and there's many more that have just a slightly lower assessment than the average ponds unit. The average single-family home will pay $12.51 per month based on their land cover and acreage. And the average commercial property will pay $123.63 per month. And just in conclusion, I will just note that the assessment roll before you tonight is based solely on benefit derived. That is the only thing we are able to look at under state law. So under the Michigan Drain Code, we have to look at benefit derived, which we have attempted to do very methodically by using the bid tab, by using the construction plans and engineering plans for the project, and by using the land cover data set and the acreage amounts for each parcel based on the assessing records. The calculations for the full assessment roll are transparent and in the board packet, and the calculations for the pond special benefit factor is also there with every single line item from the bid tab detailed, including the soft costs. And soft costs that's jargon for attorney fees and engineering that the Ingham County Drain Commissioner has incurred for the project. So tonight I'm asking the board to approve resolution number 5, which will adopt the final assessment roll in the amount of $2.6 million, and we remain committed to 50% of the total assessment roll. And finally, I'll just remind residents that if they have if they have questions for the drain office, that they can contact them there. And I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Board members, I think we should have a motion first to discuss. Treasurer DeShane.
I move to approve the Daniels Drain Public Drain Improvements Special Assessment District Number 21, Resolution Number 5, which adopts a special assessment district defraying the cost thereof by a special assessment against the properties specifically benefited thereby, adopts a special assessment district final cost in the amount of $2,619,307.09, adopts the township's 50% contribution in the amount of $2,619,307.09, and adopts the final assessment roll for the Daniels Drain Public Drain Improvement Special Assessment District Number 21.
Is there a second to the motion?
Support.
Okay. Before we start our discussion, Ms. Hisson is here. She has worked on this project with the township and is our as the township's attorney. And we would ask if you have comments you'd like to add to Dan's presentation at this time.
No, I'm only here to address any questions that the board members have.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right, we have a motion to approve the Daniels Drain Public Drain Improvement Special Assessment District Number 21 with Resolution Number 5. Mr. DeShane, do you have comments?
I do have some comments, and I'd like to ask our attorney a question to begin with, if she'd approach the podium.
Yes, please come to the podium.
Regarding our creating of the pond special benefit in this case, I know you've worked with drain commissioners throughout the state. Are we a complete outlier here, or has this been done before, and has it been tested as being equitable by other communities?
Thank you. Yes, in my experience, again, I am a partner at Fahey Schultz Bursick Road, so you don't see me very often, only with drain projects. I haven't been in front of you in some time, and I work with about 60 different county drain offices working on a number of different, I would say hundreds. That would give away my age if I said thousands, but it probably is true. Drain assessments across the state, and I find that you are not an outlier with regard to this. It is not uncommon or unusual to look at the specifics of a significant improvement project and utilize that in the assessment methodology.
Thank you. Oh, anyone have any questions for her?
Does any other board member have questions for Ms. Henson while she's there? Okay, Mr. Henson.
Thank you.
Hendrickson.
Thank you very much, Madam Supervisor. My question is regarding the notices that have been sent out. Per our rules relating to the various resolutions that we sent, has the township met its legal obligations to provide notice to the public on our assessment rolls?
Yes, we have. Under Public Act 188, our requirement is 2 public hearings and a legal notice prior to each public hearing. Those need to arrive more than 10 days prior to the public hearing. So our public hearing dates were November 14th, 2021, April 12th, 2022. And in addition to the 2015 notice that went out for the special board meeting at the outset of this project, when we were first approached by the Ponds Cooperative about petitioning for the drain improvement, we also issued a notice that was not legally required for that public hearing on September 26, 2015. and then the letter that went out to residents that provided them with their assessment under Resolution 2, 3, and 5 prior to this meeting was not legally required, but we did it in full transparency.
So the idea was, some changes were made as a result of the comments that we heard from the public and the board at our last discussion at the public hearing. And it was not legally required to send out notice, but it was done so anyway as a method of showing the public what had transpired, more or less.
Correct. I think after the first public hearings, when our chief engineer and I sat down and talked about it, there was a lot of scrutiny of the p-value. And so, my first question was, what methodology did we use to arrive at the p-value? And we were largely absent. It was a guesstimate of sorts to arrive at proximity and the benefit derived from proximity to certain drain improvements. So for instance, if if Ivywood has a drain going into it and my home fronts on that drain improvement, that segment where the drain is going in on the linear frontage of the right-of-way, but your home is in the cul-de-sac, your home benefits just as much for the flow-through for the drain. If the drain collapsed in front of my house, it's backing water up to you. So from our perspective, the P2 value didn't make a lot of sense, and the P3 value didn't have hard math behind it. And so we just asked ourselves, okay, well, how would we arrive at the actual math? And that's where we came up with the philosophy of taking the bid tab and the engineering plans and cross-referencing them. So we didn't know what the conclusion would be, but we went down that road, and there's actually two different calculations that are in the board packet, the lower of which is what was used for Resolution 5.
Thank you. And then for Ms. Hissong, you've done a number of these assessments, as you said. How many of them were Chapter 20s?
So in terms of not as many, because that is normally, I represent drain commissioners rather than townships with regard to this, but the assessment methodology is very similar for this assessment as it would be for other drain assessments.
Would you say that it's typical that a township or municipality put up 50% of the total cost of the drain project?
In a regular non-Chapter 20 project, it is highly unusual that the township would contribute that much. Under a Chapter 20 project, the township has no obligation whatsoever to pay any amount of the project costs, and in this situation, I think the township is paying half.
Very good. Well, other than that, I'll leave it to my colleagues to ask any other questions, except to offer my gratitude for the above and beyond work that the staff has done in preparing this assessment roll.
Let me ask if other board members have questions or comments at this time. Okay, Mr. Shane.
Thank you. I'd like to address, I don't have any more questions for you, Ms. Hissong, but I would like to address some of the comments that were made during the public hearing regarding this new assessment being tied to access to the pathways. I happen to know Mr. Barberi through Hazlitt Schools. His children went through schools the same time I did. I think see him as an old friend. And before or after one of the earlier meetings, I had said to him, not as part of the formal meeting, but offhand a conversation, it would be a nice gesture if the ponds would allow the surrounding neighborhoods access to the pond, to the path around the ponds. And his response was, I'll check with the board and get back to you. And he did at the next meeting and said the board has decided they do not want to do that. This is private property and they don't have the insurance or they're not comfortable with doing that. I said, fine, issue dropped. It is private property. That was accepted as fact. It was never part of a formal proposal to the ponds. It was simply a conversation between Mr. Barberi and I as old friends from Hazlitt Schools. This really hasn't been discussed at all since that meeting back in October of last year. It's being brought up as a possible reason for the higher assessment, and that's simply incorrect. The higher assessments really are based on the public meeting we had 2 meetings back. We heard from dozens of residents about the assessments, and most of them, by and large, said they're willing to pay their fair share of assessments. They knew they benefit from the drain. what they asked us to look at was the special benefit of the drains, would they be an assessed property? We were using a proximity factor, who was the closest to the drain, who was closest to the road improvement. We listened to them, and we said to Manager Walsh, who then instructed staff to go look at these special benefits of this drain and see if a fairer assessment of the special benefit could be derived. Staff did that under the direction of Deputy Manager Opsimer, and we therefore have the new assessment rule. That's what caused the change. It wasn't the refusal to have access to the past. That issue was decided last year. It's not been brought up since then. It's a red herring. It's not the reason we have a higher assessment. The fact is, this board, as Mr. Opsimer pointed out tonight, approved this drain assessment in 2016, 5.5 years ago. Actually, in this case, more than that, but 5.5 years before the next meeting was held. We gave the Drain Commissioner in February 2016 full permission to proceed with this drain assessment at the $1 to $2 million cost. It was then not until September of 2021, 5.5 years later, before any action was taken. 5.5 years. And as a result of that delay, it's not $2 million, it's now close to $6 million. And as Mr. Opsimer pointed out, this has been a terrible time to do the drain because of supply chain issues and other factors that have caused it to go up. But where was the Drain Commissioner in 2016, in 2017, in 2018, in 2019, before the pandemic hit? Where did those 4 to 5 years go? Why wasn't action taken then? I understand the co-op members being upset by these new assessments. We recognize that ponds is a unique place. We value it, we treasure it. You represent the middle housing, affordable housing that we need more of in Meridian Township. And that's a big part of the reason, at the manager's suggestion, we put a radical amount of money into this, 50%. We've never gone beyond 15 or 20% before this drain. We want to preserve the affordability of the ponds, and that's why we took that radical step last year to commit to 50% of the cost, including 50% of the special benefits that are being derived by this. I would suggest that your anger at these assessments are misdirected at this board. This board has gone out of its way and committed the entire township's money to make this project more affordable for the ponds and for the residents around it. Your outrage really should be directed at the Drain Commissioner. He sat on this project for 4 to 5 years. Costs went up and up and up in those 4 to 5 years. If he'd done it promptly in 2016, it would have been a half or a third the cost. It was their estimate that came up with $1.2 million. So in the 5.5 years, the price went up 3 times. We had a representative of the Drain Commissioner here at the meeting two meetings back. If you remember, if you watched the meeting, Deputy Drain Commissioner Paul Pratt, I asked him, I said, why do you need 6 times the staff of the Kalamazoo County Drain Commission? Both counties are about the same size, Kalamazoo and Ingham County. But we have 6 times the staff, a payroll of $2.3 million in 2019. And his response is, we have an activist drain commissioner in Pat Lindeman. Well, what does an activist drain commissioner mean? Well, it means that you've got a bill that's 3 times what it might have been 3 years ago. And it might have been done and improved the ponds 2 to 3 years ago and allowed you to move some of the empty units 3 years ago because the ponds would have been cleaned out. The pathway would have been fixed. Your private property would have been preserved. We didn't hire the engineers for this. We did not do the work. We got handed a bill from the Drain Commissioner, which we are now assessing as fairly as we can. But we are simply a conduit for the work done by our activist Drain Commissioner, who's not even here tonight to explain why he sat idle for 5.5 years doing nothing about a drain that you brought to us to say this needs to be fixed and there's problems with the drain. public meetings were held, and on February 2nd, 2016, this board gave him a green light to proceed. And he did nothing. That's where your anger ought to be directed at. This board has gone out of its way. It's spent the larger township's money is going to pay for half of this drain. We've never done that before. And one last comment. If anyone here has felt disrespected by this board member, I haven't seen it. And if I had, I would have called them out for it. We respect you. You bring legitimate concerns to us. We do our best to explain them to you, but there's no room for disrespect. And we will not tolerate that at this meeting or any meeting of this board. I hope you understand how much our hands are tied by the Drain Commissioner in this situation. We've tried to be fair to you as residents. We've covered half the cost, and we've tried to be fair to the surrounding residents who are willing to pay their share, but they didn't see the direct public benefit that the ponds received, and that was the reason this assessment was redone. It was never about access to the pond. That was a side conversation between Mr. Barberi and I. He said the pond said no, it was dropped. This is about the special benefit the ponds will be getting from this, and that's why your assessments have been proposed as they are. Please believe me when I tell you that there's no back deals being done. This is not retribution. This is based on the facts that the staff has brought to this board as to what is a fair assessment to the residents of the ponds and the surrounding neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other board members have comments? Then we have a motion before us to approve the resolution number 5, and we're ready for the vote. Mr. Lemaster, we need a roll call vote.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Sundlin?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. And thank all of you who have come to speak on and to learn on this issue. We now move to item 12C. This is an ordinance change for final adoption. Director Schmidt will... Okay. In just a minute. Thank you, Ms. Hisson. Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Text Amendment 2022-02 would amend the Zoning Board of Appeals Standards of Review. Both the Planning Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals have previously recommended this. The Township Board has reviewed it, had no major concerns. And at the direction of the Township Board, staff has published the notice, the introduction with an intent to adopt resolution in advance of this meeting. Staff would recommend approval of the ordinance at this time and be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
I think I misspoke, and this is the standards of review ordinance change, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We have, this is for final adoption. Trustee Wazinski.
I'll move to adopt the resolution approving for final adoption zoning amendment 2022-02 to amend section 86-221 of the Charter Township of Meridian Zoning Code, an ordinance to update the Zoning Board of Appeals standards of review.
Support.
It's been moved and supported by Trustee Wazinski and Trustee Wilson. Would you have further comments?
Yes, thank you, Madam Supervisor. I did review this in depth at our previous meeting when it was brought to our attention. And being a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals in the past, I thoroughly looked at it and truly appreciate the update and the somewhat simplified standards of review. And I think that they are appropriate, and I think that they'll prove better for the ZBA to make these changes.
Thank you.
I concur with that assessment.
All right. Other comments? Treasurer DeShane.
Starting my third run on the ZBA, these are welcome changes, and it will help the ZBA immensely to do their work. It gives it much clearer criteria, and appreciate the good work being done here on this one.
Yes. Anyone else? I'm not sure it's been said, but I sat in on a ZBA meeting recently, and I had the impression that the current ZBA is very anxious to see this change come to their procedures.
That they are.
Since this is a zoning amendment or change, Mr. Lemaster, we need a roll call vote.
Trustee Sundlin,
Yes.
Trustee Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Next is item 12D. Another zoning amendment?
Yes, ma'am.
Zoning change? Mr. Schmidt.
Ordinance 2022-03 would update the front yard lot coverage standards in the Lake Lansing Residential Overlay District. This was an item that came out of the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Planning Commission has recommended approval. The Township Board has previously reviewed it and had no major concerns. And at the direction of the Township Board, staff has published the introduction with an intent to adopt the ordinance prior to this meeting. Staff would recommend the approval of the ordinance and would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Trustee Wilson.
I move to adopt the resolution approving for final adoption zoning amendment 2022-03 to amend section 86-442 of the Charter Township of Meridian zoning code, an ordinance to update the front yard lot coverage standards in the Lake Lansing Residential Overlay District.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Trustee Wilson, you have further comments?
My comments are just that this is a unique area that has been around a long time, and individuals there due to prior lot coverage were not allowed to actually have good utility of their home. So this makes it much more equitable, I think, for those homeowners to use their property.
Trustee Wazinski.
Yeah, I would concur. I would only add that that we, as a zoning board of appeals member, we did see a lot of these variances come to us, given that things have changed around the Lake Lansing. They're not cottages anymore. These are homes, and again, the utility of that property is necessary, so I support.
Anyone else?
Quick question, do you think this will reduce the amount of cases coming before the Zoning Board of Appeals?
Yes.
Yes.
It will not eliminate them. I've said it before, it won't be a panacea, but it will reduce the number.
No further questions. We need a roll call vote for this ordinance change.
Trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
Trustee Wilson,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson,
Yes.
Trustee Sundlin.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Item F begins a set of... I'm moving too fast, aren't I? Item E, another ordinance change for final adoption.
Yeah, we did have 2 Lake Lansing residential overlay updates. We split them in half in case there was concerns of one or the other. Ordinance 2022-04 would change the front yard setbacks in the district to provide some additional flexibility. And just in case the person at home is watching that had some concerns about this, it's an either or. It doesn't automatically go to the average. You can still have the underlying setback if that works for you. But it provides the flexibility to go to the underlying, to the average of the properties within 150 feet if that is a benefit to your specific property. Planning Commission has previously reviewed this and recommended approval. The Township Board also did. At the direction of the Township Board, we did publish the introduction with an intent to adopt prior to this meeting. Staff would recommend the approval of the ordinance.
All right. Trustee Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I move to adopt the resolution approving for final adoption zoning amendment 2022-04 to amend section 86442 of the Charter Township of Meridian zoning code, an ordinance to update the front yard setback standards in the Lake Lansing residential overlay district.
Support.
Support by Mr. Deshane. Comments?
Yes, so I've said it at our last couple of meetings, and I think I said it when I was on the Planning Commission as well. I wanted to take a second to commend the staff for coming up with a creative solution to a tricky problem. This is just that, allowing greater flexibility for the residents of the Lake District to be able to renovate their homes or build new or replace. I'm excited for this change to be enacted. As has been said at previous meetings, this does not fix all of the issues within the Lake Lansing Overlay District, but I think that the 2 items that were brought up tonight will handle the majority of the cases that have been brought, at least in recent history, to the Zoning Board of Appeals. As a different former member of that body, I can tell you that they will certainly appreciate that, as will the staff. So I'm very excited to have this come before us tonight, and would ask for your support for this resolution.
All right. And Mr. Deshane?
No further comments.
No further comments. Mr. Lemaster?
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Treasurer Deshane?
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Sundlin?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you. Item F, finally, is the, represents a new set of zoning changes where we're at the step of introduction of these ordinance changes, correct?
Yes, Madam Supervisor.
And so item F is?
Ordinance 2022-05 would create a non-residential fence height standard. This is an item that came out of the Zoning Board of Appeals item as well that they struggled with, and so staff went to work trying to find a creative alternative to address the problem going forward. Non-residential fences are different animals than residential fences. Oftentimes you're screening outdoor storage, or you're trying to contain equipment or outdoor storage, and additional fence height is warranted in some cases. So this would provide an opportunity for those non-residential users to make that request. Planning Commission did recommend approval of this, and the Township Board has discussed this previously and had no major concerns. At this time, we are asking you to introduce this ordinance. Staff will then publish the ordinance prior to bringing it back for adoption. We can recommend approval at this time.
Okay. Ready for a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. Trustee Wilson.
We can move to adopt, correct?
You need to move to introduce the ordinance. The resolution this evening would introduce. We will then publish it per the ordinance requirements, and we will bring it back for formal adoption of the actual ordinance. So what you're adopting this evening is the resolution.
Okay. Move to adopt the resolution approving for introduction zoning amendment 2022-05 to amend section 86-506 of the Charter Township of Meridian zoning code, an ordinance to update the maximum heights of fences, walls, and screen in non-residential zoning districts.
Support.
Been moved and supported.
This seems like a win-win kind of proposal, because in many cases, we would like to see screening higher than 6 feet for residential, commercial dumpsters and that sort of thing. So I really believe this is the way to go.
And Trustee Wazinski.
I concur. Yeah, generally we ask for some of these amenities from developers, so I think this will just, lessen the process a bit.
All right. Anyone else? Mr. Lemaster?
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Sundlin?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
To 12G, an ordinance introduction again. Director Schmidt.
Madam Supervisor, this is Ordinance 2022-06. This would clarify that more than one deck or patio is permitted in a yard. My understanding is this has previously been done through a bit of an interpretation because it does exist out there. We're merely cleaning this up and making it straightforward for homeowners to say, yep, you can put a second deck in if you have a situation that would allow it.
As long as
you still meet all the setbacks and lot coverage requirements.
Right.
It's simply eliminating the number requirement.
Okay.
Planning Commission did review it, had no major concerns. The Township Board has previously reviewed this and had no major concerns. And so the request this evening is to introduce this. Staff will then publish it prior to bringing it back for final adoption. At this time, we can recommend approval.
Treasurer DeShane.
I move to adopt the resolution approving for introduction zoning amendment 2022-06 to amend section 86-564 of the Charter Township of Meridian zoning code, an ordinance to update the permitted yard encroachments in residential zoning districts.
Support.
Supported by Mr. Hendrickson. Further comments?
Just that I think, as the director pointed out last time, a new home that has a deck with a cement pattern underneath it is technically in violation of our current ordinance. Is that correct?
Technically, yes.
So this would remedy that situation.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Lemaster.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Sundlin?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you. And the last one for tonight, at least, is item 12H. Director Schmidt.
Madam Supervisor, Ordinance 2022-07 would implement for the first step one of the goals of the master plan, which is to consolidate and streamline the number of residential districts we have. It would eliminate the RRR, one family rural residential low density district, which does not exist anywhere on the zoning map. There are no properties that are affected by this. There are no uses that are unique to this district. So we are proposing to remove it from the code in its entirety. Planning Commission has reviewed this, did recommend approval. The Township Board previously reviewed this, had no major concerns. And so the request this evening is to approve the introduction of the ordinance. Staff will then publish it prior to bringing it back for final adoption. At this time, we would recommend approval of this ordinance.
All right. Trustee Wilson.
Move to adopt the resolution approving for introduction zoning amendment 2022-07 to amend the zoning ordinances of the Charter Township of Meridian at multiple sections to delete the RRR, one family rural residential low density district from our zoning ordinance.
Support.
Supported by Trustee Wazinski. Trustee Wilson.
For all the reasons that Director Schmidt said, I concur.
Okay.
Yeah, it's unnecessary, clearly, and more efficient, so thank you.
Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you for this work on this one, and I encourage you to go after some of these other districts if you can find a way to consolidate them and to simplify them. This is very daunting for someone coming in, and our development isn't as complex as these codes make it seem. So,
I would agree.
Thank you.
And I will tell you that staff, Senior Planner Shorkey, Assistant Planner Chapman, and I are functionally, our goal is to get the single family districts to one page. that I can hand someone one page and they have everything they need to know about a single-family house in this township. And so that's the goal, and it's going to get increasingly complicated from here.
Thank you.
But this is part of an ongoing process of simplifying our ordinances and our development structure.
Absolutely.
So we haven't seen the last of you for a while.
I've got a couple more easy ones, and then it's going to get a whole lot more difficult.
Then it's going to get harder.
It's going to get much harder come July and August.
One question, does this in any way support the concept of, what's the boxes, the structure, the zoning description that we're working for?
It does not
Form-based code.
It does not get towards form-based code.
It does
Form-based code is typically a mixed-use, commercial-type district. This is strictly a residential district.
Not applied to residential. Okay. I needed to get that question out.
Understood.
Mr. Lemaster, I believe we're ready for a roll call vote.
Trustee Sullivan?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. The last action item 12I, has to do with a special assessment district for sidewalks. Mr. Opser.
Thank you, Supervisor Jackson and board members. So as we discussed during the public hearing, this is the 2021 Order to Maintain Sidewalk Special Assessment District number 19, meaning this is the 19th roll for our Order to Maintain program established in 1999. This work has already occurred. The property owners are aware and have been noticed, and they all had the opportunity to make the corrective action last year via their notice on their own, as I know Treasurer DeShane did himself when he found himself on the roll. And we are actively working on the 2022 roll, so we will be bringing you Resolution 1 later this year for that. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Trustee Hendrickson.
I move to approve the 2021 Order to Maintain Sidewalk Special Assessment District number 19, Resolution number 5, which adopts the special assessment role, designates the project as 2021 Order to Maintain Sidewalk Special Assessment District number 19. Number 19 adopts the assessment role as the 2021 Order to Maintain Sidewalk Special Assessment District number 19 Special Assessment Role, adopts the district as the 2021 Order to Maintain Sidewalk Special Assessment District number 19, adopts the amount of $35,106.87 as the final amount for the assessment role, and orders and directs the assessment role to be paid and collected.
I'll support.
With oxygen, I hope.
Trustee Wazinski supports. You have anything else you need to say?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So I just wanted to confirm, and I think you already answered this in your description, but notice you mentioned at the public hearing that the work was already done back in 2021. And you just mentioned, I think answering my question, that the residents were provided notice prior to the work being done and had an opportunity, should they choose to fix the issues themselves before being assessed by the township. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. They're given 20 days. Oftentimes they're given more than 20 days. It really comes down to the construction schedule.
Okay.
So typically they're given plenty of time to hire their own contractor if they wish to. And if they just give us notification that they wish to, we will hold off and perhaps put them at the end of the list.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, all the work has been performed. We don't know the true cost until we actually complete the work.
Sure.
So this is kind of the normal process. Typically, you would see Resolution 5 in like January or February. So due to staff turnover, in February, this got pushed off.
Sure. And then my second question, which you may or may not be able to answer, which is how many districts are there? You know, we've bundled 5 or 6 neighborhoods together. How many years does it take to get back to the first one?
Well, we go based on the plats or the final plans that go through planning and community development. There are sections, and I don't know the actual total number of sections in the township. So the memo 36 sections. So typically we do work in 3 to 4 per year. So doing that division.
Theoretically, one might say you'd be hearing from us every 12 years or so, depending on the number of sections included in a given year.
Yep, and our sidewalks are in very good order. So again, we measure, so if you have a gap between 2 slabs of a 1/2 inch, you get put on the list. If you have a cracked slab and that crack meets or exceeds a 1/4 inch, you're on the list. And so we go out and do, you really get on the list twofold. You either call and complain about your sidewalk, and we will make temporary corrections. So we will take cold patch out to soften those lips when we have like a root heave one of the slabs. Or if there's a really bad crack and settling, we would bring cold patch out for that as well to do a temporary fix. Then we put you in the roll. Item number 2 is you're in one of the neighborhoods or sections that we are vetting, and we go out and we literally walk the sidewalks.
Sure. So if your sidewalks are in good working order every 12th year when they come around, then you may not see us for 24 years.
Yep.
Terrific. Thank you.
Correct.
Okay. Treasurer DeShane.
This program was started in 2009, is that correct?
1999. We are on our 9th rendition of the program. Not all communities have it, and it shows.
Yeah. It's a great program. It's a great move by a previous board. Our residents are out there walking the sidewalks, and I tend to walk a lot in the summer. The only time I've ever really fallen because of a gap was in front of an Oklahoma school that didn't that had quite a gap. Not to point fingers here, but that's where it happened. So it's a good program.
We find the weaknesses in the system, right? You find the root structures that are heaving slabs, and then typically it's not too recurrent, or at least the recurrence takes longer. So we correct kind of those weak points in our system, just like we do every year with water main breaks, where we discover through the frost heave the weak joints in our water main system.
When you go out and patch an existing piece of sidewalk before the work is done, do we charge the homeowner for that work?
No.
Okay, it's part of our public works.
DPW crews will just go out and lay the asphalt and tamp it down. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Mr. Lemaster?
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you very much. Item 13 is board discussion items. We don't have any tonight, but I am willing to entertain any you'd like to introduce if there's something burning. Then we'll move on to item, Treasurer DeShane.
I didn't expect to have time for this, and so it's a good chance to bring it up. We have not yet, due to the turnover, had our board retreat for 2022. Yet we have 2 new board members that would likely benefit from a board member retreat. I would like to get some feedback if the board is interested in doing a retreat yet in 2022, picking a date perhaps in June. In the past, we've done it on a Saturday morning, went from 9 to around 2 with a quick stop for lunch. So before we've also used a professional staff in the past. Larry Merrill from the Michigan Township, former director of the Michigan Township Association, has been our facilitator. And Larry is very effective and taking us through that process. And I think everyone who came out of those 2 retreats we did before, at least I certainly felt it was productive use of our time, helped the board to work together better. So before we go any further, I'd like to get some feedback from other members of the board. If that could have been my pet project. I actually started it because it was part of my MTA project to get MTA certified. So then Supervisor Steika tasked me with that. So anyway, I'd like to get some feedback from board members. How do we feel about doing a half-day retreat in June?
All depends on the date.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll throw out some dates and we'll get some feedback and see if we can find a date we can all be together.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
I would also note that we have not had our boards and commission joint meeting. And so we need to think also about
right.
trying to get us all in one room and talk about what we're all doing, share what we're all doing and accomplishing. Anything else? All right, we come to item 14, comments from the public. I have no new green sheets. No, gentlemen? Not interested tonight, okay? Then we go to item 15, other matters and board member comments, other board member comments. Nothing new tonight? Mr. Walsh? No, they don't seem to.
Just to give you kind of an outlook for the next board meeting, come prepared for some really deep subjects on the 17th. One will be that Brightline. We've been working on this for a long time, the IT project, and the other be the ARP funding with a recommendation for roads and IT. Our community sign project, which I don't know anyone on the board has really seen in a long time, but there's been so much work that's gone into this. This project started about 7 years ago. And also a Community Redevelopment Act, a CRA potential up in the Hazlet Village Square, which is a complex issue, which is going to be brought to you on the 17th. So there's other things, but those are 4 big issues I wanted to give you a heads up on so you can start to give some thought to that. And if you have any questions about them, please let us know. Thank you.
Okay. With nothing else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn early tonight.
So moved. Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.
Has anyone ever opposed a motion to adjourn?